you have a beautiful voice too.
Amazing. Okay, we're live now. My name is Alexandre Nequado, and I'm here with my colleague André Dudemaine. And this week we have Corey Payette as guest. Corey, if you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, Ani, Corey Indishnikas. My name's Corey. I'm a member of the Mattagami First Nations in Northern Ontario. That's Ojibwe territory, and but I live in Vancouver now, East Van, on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. And yeah, I'm a filmmaker, director, composer, lyricist, and producer of Les Filles du Roi.
Yes, and so we are very privileged in Montreal, especially though the festival goers of Présence Autochtone and the listener of this podcast, because we have one of the greatest artists in Canada live with us in to discuss about his brand new film, Les Filles du Roi. And also, you are privileged because you have a news that is not in the news. The Les Filles du Roi will be screened in Montreal Première at the festival in August. So we will speak about Les Filles du Roi, which is a very fantastic film. It was a musical for the theater first, and then it has evolved as a feature film. And wow, each time I heard your name and I look at what you have done, there is always more and more and more. I remember the first time I heard about your work, it was when we presented the film of Marie Clemence, The Road Forward. And it was already a documentaire musical by Marie Clemence, was a fantastic filmmaker. And after that, I was really impressed by the film and, of course, by the lyrics and the music. And after that, at the Seagull Center in Montreal, maybe a couple of years after, they were programming Children of God, your musical about residential school. And one of the journalists from the Eastern Door in Ganawagi told me, do you know that guy, Corey Payette? I think if I remember well, he was the one of the musical score of Marie Clemence's film. And he looked at me, oh, yes. And then I look at your bio and wow, you have a long story. And I think we want to know more. And you in your bio, they say you have been raised in a small town, Northern Ontario. Was it Sudbury or Timmins?
No, just south of Timmins. So New Liskeard, Ontario. It's so long ago now that it doesn't even have that name anymore. It's been one of these amalgamations. Wow. So now it's called Temiskaming Shores. But yeah, it's a very small town of 5,000 people. And that's where I got my start, really through music and singing and acting and performing, until finally it sort of the music education that was possible to receive up there kind of became limited. So I moved to Ottawa for the end of my high school, to Canterbury School of the Arts, and then went to York University in Toronto. So kind of was all over the place for a little bit, and before coming out west.
And so you weren't raised in your indigenous community, and it it's interesting how you find a way to through art and creation to reconnect with the culture of your people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, my mère, my dad's mom, she is the one who connected us the most when she was alive. She passed away in 2019, but she was the one who really kept us close. Every summer went to our nation and went up north, like, because even further north is where my reserve is. And so it was really, it's something where I'm so happy that I had that experience growing up, and that I was able to, learn so much. And then as an adult and as an artist, being able to find a way to share those stories, those perspectives through the work and films and musicals that I have to share.
Mm-hmm. And I think I may be wrong, but what I see is all your creations, your productions had taken place in Vancouver. So this is a huge step from Ottawa to Vancouver. And how come you landed in that beautiful place on the Pacific coast?
Well, it was, I've been here for 15 years, and I met my husband here. I have a very a deep community here on the West Coast, and for a while I was acting and I was performing, like singing, and that was my main thing that I was doing out here. And so what brought me out was the Olympics. Actually, was coming out here for a theater show, a big theater show with Tom Jackson at the Vancouver Playhouse. And so and then from that point on, I just stayed. I've just been here ever since, and I love it. It's home. It's definitely home now, and traveling all around and sharing these stories and all of the work that I've been able to produce has just been such a gift to be able to share it with different communities, because that's the beauty of film, is that it just has the ability to reach so much further. We went to a film festival in Montana, and it was extraordinary. People that I could never have thought that they would find a connection with this film. They really felt it so deeply. It's called Flathead Lake International Cinema Fest, and it's on a reservation in the States, and a lot of the audience was Indigenous people and also like retired ranchers. But it was so fascinating, the discussion, and that it was something that they felt was almost made for them, even though we never even thought that it would go there. So it's exciting to see where these stories lead to.
So you are speaking of Les Filles du Roi, the film. So okay, let's jump to the present time and speak about Les Filles du Roi. A question I know they will ask me when at the press meeting we will have soon to announce the programmation. I see the journalists in Montreal, and one of them will surely tell me, "Hey, André, you had been one of those who had complained before about cultural appropriation, and then here you have an indigenous dramaturgist that is taking the characters of Les Filles du Roi. Is it not cultural appropriation?"
Wow. Yeah. There's a part of me where I do feel like I'm not, I don't live in Montreal and I don't live in Quebec. And I feel like this piece is really born out of a very personal perspective that I have, and that Julie McIsaac, who co-wrote the film with me, and who's also one of the stars in it. She plays Marie-Jeanne. And so Julie McIsaac is a descendant of Les Filles du Roi, and this whole project was her idea. Like, she came to me with this idea of Les Filles du Roi and telling a musical story. And then my prompt to her was, well, when Les Filles du Roi arrived, they didn't just arrive to nothing. They didn't arrive to a land that was uninhabited. There were indigenous people here. There was culture. There was heritage. There were communities. There were long generations of trade routes and a complex web of interrelationships that went all up and down, the St. Lawrence and all across the area of eastern Turtle Island. And so she was really excited by that and really inspired. And I think that really launched us into telling this story and to telling the story in a good way. So from the beginning, it has never been about retelling the French or retelling the English or whatever colonial side to the story. It's always been about unearthing the indigenous narrative that we know existed at the time and that we wanted to make sure that people understood. And so that began our journey, going to, I was saying to Alexandre before you got on the call that, been to Montreal a number of times and went all through the South and spoke with, indigenous elders. We worked with a community called Akwesasne, that's a reserve that borders New York State, Ontario, and Quebec. And we worked with the Native North American Traveling College there with elders and language keepers and, language teachers on the language piece and on the history and the larger cultural context. And so I guess to like answer your question more directly, I think of this as what was this like for indigenous people to have their history not be told for so long, for so many generations, and for French people to think that this is the way that it was, and that French people and English people have been brought up in this culture where they know their perspective, but they never stopped to think, what would it have been like if our language had been taken from us like indigenous people have had happen? What would that have been like? And what I would say to that journalist is that I hope that the audience will come away from this and find moments of unity and really see ourselves in each other, to say your struggle is our struggle. We're all in this together, and we have to find a way forward together if we live on this land. And that was a huge teaching that we received from the Indigenous elder who worked with us and from a number of the different people that we worked with in community. And I feel like that was really what we were left with, of that we needed to take this message forward and make sure that this film acted as a place for opening conversation, for opening those new perspectives for audiences in a way that perhaps they wouldn't be able to receive if not for the sharing of this film. So I hope that answers the question. It's a big question.
Yes, but yes, it answer. It's one of the possible answer. But obviously, at those times, the traders, the Les Filles du Roi, were persons from the people, were normal people at those times. So they were not people that were writing their journal and keeping. So we know very little about Les Filles du Roi. And when there is a silence in the history with a big H, this is fantastic for storytelling with a little s. It lets place to all what we can figure out from our own contemporary perspective, who they were, how they were dressed, how they. There is very few historic insights, so it's free for us to imagine what they were living and how it was. That would be my response.
Yeah, and also I'm also part French Canadian, so I also don't feel like it's cultural appropriation in any way. And also Julie is part French Canadian, so it's like these are parts of our personalities. They are parts of our upbringing. I know, growing up in Northern Ontario, I know how divided French and English communities are. I've seen it in my upbringing. I've seen it in my own community, and how challenging those relationships are. And what I wanted to offer was an opportunity to come together and to learn and share and have it be an Indigenous perspective that's understood. And I hope, and I really, really hope that people, that they can put aside that feeling of, because I know that people will say, why is there English in a French historical piece, right? Why are they speaking English within this French context? And what I would say is because, well, first off, when we were in Akwesasne, they speak English, and they also speak Ganyangeha. But so we wanted to make sure that the community that we're creating this with would be able to hear it and understand it. And so that was a big part of it. And also we wanted it to be accessible to broad audiences all around the world. And so that felt like a really great way to do it. But I just hope that doesn't trigger people too much to just shut down and not listen or not hear this perspective, because a lot of it, well, I was going to say when we were talking about, because the accounts aren't written down, that's the same with what we experienced and what we heard within the Indigenous community that we were speaking with. So we were talking to elders and even archaeologists and historians within the Indigenous community who were sharing with us, like, what was the sort of movement at the time. And so a lot of this story, while it wasn't written down, while the story wasn't from a textbook or from some sort of firsthand account, the historians and the archaeologists and the people that we spoke with, the elders in the community, they had stories and they had knowledge of where the people were moving at that time. And that features prominently in our story. So even though it's not the personal account that we're so used to nowadays, where it's like a journal or a letter or something like that, it's fictionalized within what we understand and what historians and archaeologists and elders understand to be the movement of the people at the time. And I think that is really exciting and really something to be proud to share.
And also, it's interesting because it is a trilingual production. We are, well, when the French speak with the Mohawk, often they speak in English. This is the language, the basic language of the film. But often we are French between themselves, speaking French, and we heard, wow, which is not common in cinema, and not less common even in a musical. We heard song in Ganyanga, the Mohawk language, and I am curious how you work to have those songs in Mohawk and adjust the music to the lyrics. Yeah.
Well, we knew that it was so much of language and so much culture exists within language. And when we're talking about the characters speaking in English or speaking in broken French, broken Ganyangeha, that was some of what we were told at the time. So traders who were operating along that route, they would be speaking a couple words in French. They would be speaking a couple words in English. They would mostly be speaking in Mohawk, but it was also kind of broken Mohawk. because that's the way that people within different languages communicate, right? They don't know the word for something. Okay, well, what about this? Do you know what that is? And there's this whole like trade language that was established. So part of our paying homage to that was in featuring all three. And I think in some of those scenes where you see the French and the English and the Mohawk come together, that's really exciting for us to be able to see where they switch and where those languages play off of one another. But we didn't want to make it a hard and fast rule that, okay, all the French people only speak French and all the English people only speak English and all the Mohawk people only speak Mohawk, because that's not the reality of what happened at the time. Everyone was learning little bits of everyone else's language, and it was much more fluid. At least that was some of the teachings that we received. And then when it came to actually writing, so we Julie is fluent French speaker, so she worked with me in the lyrics and the of writing all the French songs. And then when it came to the Mohawk, we worked with a group of 4 different Mohawk women at the Native North American Traveling College to help us translate and interpret the language, because really it was a giant process. It took us a couple years of going back and forth, because you can't just literally translate the language. It's like you can't just take one, like the word for chair isn't just chair. It isn't a thing. It's about relationship. It's about connection, history, future. So there's a whole web of interconnectedness that needed to be factored in order to achieve an appropriate translation. So that took a great deal of work. So for example, when a character is speaking in Kanien'kehá:ka, we would have to talk to the elder and then also the language teachers about, well, what are they wanting? What is their relationship to this person? Is this someone who is new to them? Is this someone who is a familiar person? Is this someone who is from this territory? Is someone from afar? So there was a whole world view that was really built into the language, and that just made for a very deep and rich a translation process. And then we actually brought our cast to Akwesasne, and they were taught in like language school, because thankfully this was a language school, and they went in classes with an elder Yawendas Mabel White, and for an entire week of coaching and working through all the language, and we recorded it all, and they were able to practice that and then put it into their roles. But that was a really wonderful time, because it just meant that we weren't guessing and we weren't trying to figure out, oh, is this the right way? In some cases, the elder that was working for us, Yawendas, she was giving line readings to actors saying, you should say it like this. They would say it like this. And then the actor's like, okay, great. That's how I'll do it. And so it provided us with such an enormous opportunity and such a great way of sharing the language and the story, that I just don't even, it was just such an extraordinary time. We've been working on this story, on this production, since 2014. So it's been 10 years of doing this work. As you were saying, started as a theater production and then was adapted into a film. But when I look back on all of it, I just think about how unbelievably precious all of those moments were, to get to sit with elders and sit with language keepers and really feel like we were moving this story forward together. And so that's where I feel when there is criticism that comes, I have to go back to the process. I have to go back to the people and recognize that those relationships, that development was all done in a really good way. So, yeah.
Another tradition that is really present in the script. This is a romantic, a beautiful and romantic love story with, of course, dramatic historical background, but we have the main character is Fille du Roi that will fall in love with a Mohawk leader. So, well, it's a choice, but it's I would say it's not. First of all, indigenous narrative. This is a narrative that is an American, all-American narrative with a very rich stage tradition.
And
well, so,
I think it was that we wanted to make sure that there was almost a coming together, because we did know that there were there were a lot of French people who ended up in relations with indigenous people, whether it was familial or whether it was being together on their trapper trader routes. There were long histories there that went for generations. So that was something that we felt really needed to exist within this story. And also that I feel like I just think when the story, the history that we were taught of Les Filles du Roi, and I was brought up in education system in Northern Ontario, and so I think there was like maybe a day or like a couple days of history classes on Les Filles du Roi, but it was very it was kind of a fantasy. Like it was kind of like these women were selected and they came over in a ship and everything was great. They married these beautiful husbands and they had many children and it was a huge success. But what we learned in the process of researching historical documents is that it was extremely tough, that the journey was hard, and that so many women passed away on the journey across the water. And so what was that like? And so that there's scenes in the film about that process. And we felt like we didn't want to romanticize the experience of survival for these women. We wanted to make sure that we got a really good look at the strength that was needed from these women to survive. And part of that was in connecting with Indigenous people, and in this case being supported by an Indigenous brother and sister, and then actually falling in love with him. And so that felt like a very we understood the thread of making that connection clear. But also there were also many historical accounts that we did find one letter from a Fille du Roi, and the letter was that she was writing back to her son in Paris. And so that was also fascinating, because we thought, I thought that these were young women. These were young women who were like starting a new life and who were coming over to Turtle Island to, start families and marry. But actually they had children back in France, or they had, so they had a whole other life. And so that was really when the history that we've been told, and then all of the history, the kind of research that we did, they weren't lining up. And so we just wanted to be able to include that complexity, to start to have audiences question the histories we've been told. And, some people will be happy for that and will be excited to hear that complexity and to really dive into the meat of what was that experience like for these women. And I think that's, all of that complexity is present within this telling of Les Filles du Roi. It definitely isn't a romanticized like everything was good and it worked out fine. It's like it was hard. It was really hard.
Also, there is a particularity in the narrative. Well, we know that usually I don't know if we can say matrimonial link between French and Indigenous, were the male trader with Indigenous woman. But there, it's interesting because you turn it around. It's filles du roi with an Indigenous man. And traditionally in the romantic narrative of the American movie, when there is a love story between an Indigenous and a non-Indigenous, one of the partner has to die before the end of the film, because this cannot goes. It would be almost indecent, especially with in the Anglo-Saxon Protestant view. It was something that is almost scandalous, the racial mix. So you go, in a sense, you take a very traditional format, but finally you twist it in a very untraditional way.
Yeah, and I think where that came down to is about giving the women choice. At the time, it was a radical thing for the women to be able to choose, to be able to say, this is who I'm marrying. And that is something that was consistent with a lot of what we were reading about this time. But that then a fille du roi would choose a Kanien'kehá:ka person, I think is something that, really empowers these characters to write their own story and to follow their own instincts, and of course that goes against everything, and there's all sorts of fallout of what happens because of that. But I think that what it ultimately, or what it's serving, is to really live up to that these women had the right to choose who they wanted to marry, and that at the time was an extraordinary thing. Even in a lot of places in the world, that the women were not given that kind of choice.
So the main character is a rebel in her own culture and her own people, but also it's not easy on the Mohawk side. She is not automatically accepted, even if her lover was willing to follow up with this love story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So the film has been around for a while, and you spoke about Montana, but what is the reaction?
Well, it's been all over. So it premiered at Flickers in Rhode Island, and what we've noticed is it's got to a lot of places that have a strong French community, which is really exciting. So like in Rhode Island, there's a large French community, so that's where it premiered, and feedback has been wonderful. Then it went to Vancouver International Film Festival and premiered there. That was great. And another thing that was really interesting is a lot of places in the States, we've probably the most festivals we've been to have been in the United States, from Florida to St. Louis to Montana. It's really been all over. And then last November, the film went to Greece. So we had the whole film translated into Greek. So now it's not only English, French, Ghanaian, but also Greek. So that was wild, and we got nominated for a number of awards. I think 5 awards at that festival, and then over the weekend we were at the Leo Awards, which are the largest awards for TV and film in the province here in BC. And we won 2 awards. We won for production design, and we also won for the best original score. So that was a really special treat and fun to celebrate with the whole cast and crew, and just feel like, you know, from the beginning, we didn't. I wish I could say this was a part of a grand plan. You know, that this was that I envisioned this kind of broad reach for the film, but it really has just surprised us over and over how many people are looking for these kinds of stories, and how many people have had the same questions that we've had as filmmakers to think about, well, is this the full story? Are we getting the full story? And I feel like that's been the biggest response, is just a gratitude for asking those questions and not necessarily knowing all the answers or trying to say this is how it was and this is what it needs to be, but rather saying, here's all of the complexity that we understand from this history. Now let's hold space for that, and then see how that history has stayed, and how certain things that were set up in that history around leadership and around oppression and you know, colonization, how we're still living in those systems, and that we had an option to choose a different way. There was a moment where we could have chosen to uplift matriarchal cultures, to uplift Indigenous stories, and to listen to Indigenous communities. And that didn't happen at the time. That wasn't the reality that the history has told us. But we can start anew. We can make new choices and include these perspectives in terms of our understanding of the world today. And so that, for me, has been the strongest response, is people really resonating with that larger vision for the piece. And then also, I think that people love musicals. You know, I think people are surprised that the music can hit them so hard, and that the music has such a deep resonance with both, because some of the songs, you know, are drumming songs from these characters. Some of the songs are a prayer that's in French, you know, and then other songs are in English. But the fact that all of those languages and cultures dance together and weave together between each other, I think is something that for sure was a huge goal for us, to be able to have those be fluid in their transition. And I think people really enjoy that, or that's been something that people have remarked on, is how the music operates to tell the story.
Also in the film, sometimes we know we are in a theater, because we have seen where it is obviously staged, especially the beautiful. I really like the choreography of the Filles du Roi all together. Like, wow, that was really interesting. And at other time, it is more realist. We are in a narrative, traditional narrative cinema. And you mix both, and this is both side, the theatrical and the, I would say, the cinematographical one. And how do you work this, and why don't you choose to go in only one direction?
That's a great question. I think that we wanted to pay homage to the original stage production, to be able to still have it be connected to that theatricalized storytelling, but in terms of narratively and as a filmmaker and how I wanted to present those stories, is that what we found was that in the moments when we're going into those black box spaces, so the theatricalized dance sort of heightened world where it's like everything's dark and we're just seeing little glimmers of story and of these characters and of dance and movement, what we found was that we wanted to bring out the inner lives of these women. So whenever we went into the black box, it was to show some sort of memory, some sort of dream. And as we know, dreams and memories are fragmented, and we don't always see them clearly in our minds. Or if you're trying to remember a dream that you had, you'll probably remember a glimpse of something or something with shadowy edges, but you don't really know, did I see that? Is that, it doesn't quite make sense, And I felt like this theatricalized space really offered us a wonderful opportunity to shade in the world of these Fizurwa, their inner lives, their inner dreams, maybe the things that are not literally what they see in front of their eyes, but their memory of home, their memory of that ballroom scene where they're all dancing and everything. It's like those are little fragments of them having a joyous night, but then it immediately snaps back to an intimate personal moment between a mother and her daughter, or a sister who's having to say goodbye. And it offered us so much storytelling possibility to be able to really activate the inner lives of these women. And so I just felt like when we did finally see it in the full picture, I was so thrilled that we had given so much space for that in the story, just because I think that audiences need it. I think they need to have those moments where they're just with these women on this journey, and the uncertainty and the fear, right? The fear of leaving everything behind, and how destabilizing that is. And those kinds of constructed theatrical spaces were perfect, were the perfect vehicle to be able to share that from the perspective of these women.
I would like to speak about your other works too.
Oh, sure.
And I saw that you have a new musical, Star Walker. I don't remember.
Star Walker.
Star Walker. Okay. So wow, it sounds like Skywalker in Star Wars. So is it touring now? Because I know it has had its premiere last year, if I am right.
Yes, you are right. It premiered in Vancouver last winter. But what was great was that we did the stage production, and then 2 days later, we went to camera to adapt it into a feature film. So right now, we're in the process of, we have rough cut and we're in post, and we're hoping that it will be released this winter. So the next one is coming, it's hopefully going to, well, the thing is it's about an Indigenous two-spirit character who discovers drag, and basically that unearths an enormous part of their personality and their love and family, and just a joy that they didn't know ever existed. And so it's a love story. It's based here in East Van. It's also a contemporary piece, which a lot of my shows have been historical pieces. A lot of the stories that I've told have been based in history. And so this is one of the first ones that is a contemporary narrative, and also a queer narrative, a narrative of a love story between, two gay lovers in East Vancouver, and so the whole score is new. It sounds very different than Les Filles du Roi. It's kind of a dance pop rock score, but it's fun, and it's just so joyful, and so hopefully that one will also make its rounds in the not too distant future.
And I hope we will have the opportunity to premiere it in Montreal. And also,
we have we've worked, like you were saying before, we worked with the Seagull Center and have had shows in Montreal before, and so I'm excited about the possibility of some of those same audiences hearing about these films coming, and that brings out, you know, new audiences and new conversations, and kind of connecting those stories with what is being shared today. So it's very exciting to me.
And also, we have to connect better Montreal and Vancouver, because this is two places where there is incredible indigenous creativity. And well, the film helps because the films can travel more easily, but there is all kind of arts that are blooming here and there. And I think we should make the artists travel to a place to the other. We can work on it in the next year.
I love that, and I've been really hopeful that Les Filles du Roi would be able to have some sort of screening in Montreal. That has been something that I've really been hoping for, and so really having us at your festival is just really a dream come true, because I feel like I think that it's hard sometimes for people to really understand what it is that we're doing until you see it. Once you see it, I think that it becomes clear the kind of story that we're trying to tell, and that it's not one that people are expecting. It's not one that will affirm the traditional narrative of these histories. But I also feel like we should hold space for more complexity, you know, for more perspectives, and that we can only benefit from that, you know. And so I'm so excited for the conversations. I cannot wait to hear what people say.
Yes, and it will be very interesting, because here in Montreal there is people that descend of some of the Filles du Roi, so this is a very, for many people, it's a close story. It's not a,
but there's everywhere. I would say in almost every place. I don't know about Greece, but in Rhode Island and also in Montana and in Vancouver, we've had many audience members who are descendants of Les Filles du Roi. And the exciting thing is it's almost like they knew what they were coming into, but they didn't understand how their own history would be intermeshed with the history that we're telling. And so a lot of people have said, you know, they were challenged. It was a challenge, but that through it all, they understand, you know, what it is that we're trying to make here, what it is that what kind of a statement that we're making, and that they were behind that. And so that's a you know, always felt very beautiful to me, is people who do have these personal connections, but that they're also still open to receiving the history in a new way.
I saw you have received a reconciliation award in BC, and do you see those stories, those creations, as part of a reconciliation process?
Absolutely. I I feel like, well, that was just a huge honor to receive that award alongside people who are doing reconciliation activities in all different aspects of their lives, whether it's climate change, whether it's, health and wellness, policing, and then there I am as the artist, like the person is like, here I am doing it in the arts. But what I was so proud of is recognizing how transformative art and storytelling and these really they're gifts. They are prepared as gifts for the community to be able to see themselves, to be able to see the history that is more reflective of their history. So for Indigenous people, I think that these stories and seeing them get out there more only helps them to know that they're not alone, and that the histories that they've been told are valid, and that they should be taught and held alongside other more dominant narratives. And so that, I think, is a part of reconciliation, especially for a lot of Indigenous people who don't see their stories represented and told in the media and in different on different platforms in the arts. But also, I think what and this I didn't know, but that when a lot of non-Indigenous people come to see my shows, a lot of times it's the first time that they're engaging with some of these narratives. And so I hope that they act as a bit of a launching pad for audiences to learn more and to start to question their own, like the own histories that they've been told. And for sure, there are people who will come in and it will challenge them, and they'll say, that isn't for me. And I don't want to have, like, I wanted this to be in French, and that is their, their barrier. And I think that's fine. That's where they're at in their own reconciliation journey. But for some people who are prepared for it and who are using this as a chance to really dissect and engage with these, Indigenous narratives, I think that it can be the start of a really exciting journey that starts to unpack the complex history of this land. And that, for me, is something that I think I didn't plan to do when I was creating all this work. That was never the goal, was to have that kind of impact on people. But I hear it all the time. Like there's a lot of people who come up to me and who talk about my shows being the first time that they heard some of these histories, and that it helped them to learn more. It helped them to pick up books and watch documentaries and learn more about their own, the land that they're from. And for me, I just feel like that is the power of stories, the power of film, of theater, of art to transform people's lives. And so I'm thrilled to be someone who's working towards that more just world.
Yeah, I am surprised of what you say when you say I was not thinking of the impact, social impact while doing the work. But when I saw Children of God about the residential schools, I said, wow, that was a story that had to be told, of course. And the impact is really, really strong, not only of the story, but of the narrative and the work. That's really a big emotive experience to assist at the Children of God. And you were certainly writing it, thinking about what it will do after, when the production is presented all around Canada.
I guess, but I didn't. I can't say that I did think about the impact. I was telling, as a creator of these shows, I am only after the truth and the specificity of these people. So for me, it's a very it's the story is very specific, and everything that I'm looking to share is about a personal experience. And then how that might resonate with a much larger community or resonate in terms of people's larger journeys with reconciliation. I think I'm thrilled for that impact, but I know that that larger change comes from specificity. It comes from a being let in to a door or a window into a history or a life of a person who you don't see as just a number in a textbook or a name in a newspaper, but you see it as a brother, a sister, a family member, someone who could be like any of us, right? Could be exactly like you and your sibling, or you and your parent. And that, for me, is my entry point into every story that I tell, is about that specificity of character. And then if that resonates, in around the entire, larger community, then I think that's just the power of specificity and of good storytelling. But I don't go into it thinking, well, how am I gonna, create reconciliation? Because I just think that almost it's the byproduct of having a deep emotional impact on an audience.
I saw a photo I think it was on your Facebook, where the legend under the photo say, my in New York City, my
Carnegie Hall.
Andrew Carnegie Hall premiere.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, the first. My first feeling, my first reaction was to say, wow, good for him. That's the first step to stardom. Right? We are still speaking about star. but reading that it was a song by, of the character of the main character of the children of God, I got another feeling. I said, wow, this is the soul of those children that all of a sudden is there to be here by the world. There's finally that tragic story become a tragedy, and it's a way we know it from the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, that the tragedy is a way to clean the trauma and go forward. So I thought that this photo was telling more than, of course, what is obvious, that you are now a great and famous artist.
I don't know about that, but I will say, so that they asked me to be a part of that years before. So I've known about that for a very long time. And I kind of forgot about it. Like, they asked me, they said, we want to, first it started off as, we want to sing one of your songs. It was this giant, what's called a mass choir. So it was like, I think it was like 300 people from all across Turtle Island who were in this choir. And they asked me they asked to sing a song. And then they came back to me and said, would you want to come and introduce it and also be the soloist? And I thought, sure, that sounds fun. But I didn't think of it as a big deal. I really didn't think of it as like Carnegie Hall. I don't know what I was thinking, but I didn't think it was a big deal, or it didn't land on me that, like what you're saying, that it was that kind of experience. And it wasn't until I was up there and I was introducing the song on stage and talking about the history, talking about the story, talking about using Indigenous language in this piece in Children of God. It's Anishinaabemowin, to connect with these ancestors, connect with this history in a deeper way, and how that really opens us all up to a cultural reclamation and rebuilding, and like a positive message moving forward. And then as I was starting to sing the song, I had this moment of recognizing I need to take this in. I need to realize that this is going to be a moment that I will be thinking of for the rest of my life. But it didn't hit me until I started to sing, until I started to because up until that point, it was like, I'm here to introduce the song and all this. And then I'm looking around the audience, and Carnegie Hall has like 5 balconies. Like, it's huge. It's giant. I think it's like 3,000 seats or something. It's huge. It's a giant space. And it was full. The whole place was filled. And I was also surprised by that. I was like, who are these people? So I'm looking around. I'm just trying to take it in. 2,000. Wow. Yeah. 2,004 seats. 2,804. And then I'm trying to take it in, and then as the song is going and I'm leading it, and I've sung this song a million times, so it's not something that I get nervous about. But as I'm coming to the end, I just feel this enormous wave of that the ancestors are with me, that it's not, none of it is about me. None of it is recognizing, of when you're saying, oh, I'm a famous singer. That doesn't even enter into my mind. It's thinking about how this song, through Indigenous language, has been a vehicle for so many people to hear these stories, and to share these really deep and dark things, but that the way through it is by sending it up, and by celebration, and by really releasing that, and in a way that is through song, right? A very, like, traditional ceremony, drumming, connects with the heartbeat. These Indigenous languages, Anishinaabemowin, is a language of the land. And so by using that powerful ceremonial tool to send it up is, I felt all that in that moment. And then and the other thing I'll say is, I've sung the song before, and sometimes I'll end the song, I'll like have the final drum and everything will stop. And then there's usually, like, people don't know that they're supposed to clap, or don't know that it's over or something like that. So there'll be this long pause, and it's a bit awkward. And I'm kind of just like, like they're not into it, But at Carnegie Hall, that was not what happened. It was the loudest sound, because obviously 2,804 seats. It was deafening, the applause. And then I turn around, I gesture to the choir, and I turn back, and all of a sudden I see people starting to stand. And then there's people standing in the orchestra, and it's like a wave moving from the balcony into the orchestra until people are on their feet. And I felt like I was bowing forever. And the other thing, I wasn't the last song before intermission. I wasn't the last song of the show. I was in the middle of the first act. So like I wasn't put in a special position, And so then I bow, I finally stop, and I go backstage. And the Carnegie Hall, when a person is making their debut at Carnegie Hall, the whole audience, the whole crew backstage lines up and applauds your entrance. So I'm walking out, and all the crew, these like crusty crew members who have worked there forever, but they know it's a big deal. So they applaud your entrance. And as I came off, they're all cheering for me and hugging me. And the executive director of the concert series said, "You just got a standing ovation at your debut at Carnegie Hall." And I couldn't even put it into words, because there was no expectation. And then I got in the elevator, and I took it up to my dressing room, and I called my parents and I just sobbed. Like I just cried for so long. And they were like, "Whoa, you should have told us. We would have been there. Like, we would have come down." And I thought, I didn't think it was going to be a big deal. It didn't hit me that it was going to be a big deal until I was actually singing the song and realizing, what an enormous moment this was, not just for me, but for so many of my ancestors and also the broader community, that this was a special moment for all of us.
I think we would like to continue with you for hours. It's so fantastic, but I think it's time to close the podcast today. Do you have something to add, Alexandre?
That's a great ending.
Yeah,
Great story. Yeah. I love
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We were almost there.
Oh, I'm so thrilled, and this is such a joy to get to speak with you both today. This is I'm so thrilled, so thrilled.
So we will do it again.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, and good luck for in all your projects, because I am sure you have many projects in front of you or on your workbench.
Yeah.
I guess you'll be here for the festival.
Yeah, I'm going to try to make it. Yeah, I'm
Oh,
going to try to
good.
make it out.
Good. Okay.
If not me, some others. We actually we did some filming just south of Montreal, and so we have some cast members who live in Montreal, and so I'll be sure to connect you all.
Yeah, if you come to Montreal, the festival can have a room for you in Montreal.
Oh, wonderful. Miigwech, thank you so
All right,
much. It's
miigwech.
so great to talk with you.
Yeah, c'est discriminated.
So I guess I'll see you next week, André.
Yes, next week we are there again with great people, and we are more and more speaking about the upcoming festival in August. So stay tuned. You will be the first to know about what will be presented in the next Montreal First Peoples Festival, Festival International Présence Autochtone. Voilà.
Nequado, xʷməthkվəy. Bye-bye.